understand why half the grid of the OzOvals V8 supercar series is currently, icing their shoulders and staring blankly at the ceiling, wondering where it all went wrong, well, look no further than the microscopically narrow groove of grip at Darlington Raceway.
Oh, absolutely.
Welcome to the deep dive. We are speaking directly to you, the drivers sitting in the paddock, who are probably still picking the fiberglass out of your teeth from round 9.
Yeah, it was brutal.
Today, we aren't just looking at who managed to survive the Lady in Black. We are turning the PR filter completely off.
Right. No sugarcoating it today.
Exactly. Our mission is to dissect the exact anatomy of the paddock terrorism we just witnessed, air out the dirty laundry piling up in the steward's office, and analyze how the official and unofficial standings are just warping the grid's collective mind.
It really is warping minds out there.
It is. And we're going to mentally prepare you for the high-speed, fuel-saving chess match awaiting you at the Texas Motor Speedway Anzac round. Okay, let's unpack this. Because Darlington wasn't just a race. It was a psychological meat grinder.
It was an absolute interrogation of character. I mean, Darlington is a track that doesn't just punish aggression. It actively baits you into it and then ruins your season for taking the bait.
Right. It dares you to push.
Exactly. You're dealing with this massive, sweeping visual landscape of asphalt, but the reality of the racecraft is that the functional racing line is, well, it's narrower than your actual car.
Yeah, you basically have an inch of margin.
Literally an inch. The moment you step half a tire width outside that groove because you got impatient with the car in front of you, the wall just reaches out and claims you.
Just sucks you right in.
It does. The drivers who found success in round 9 were the ones who managed their own adrenaline, while the drivers who let the sheer frustration of traffic dictate their decision-making are the ones currently begging their virtual mechanics for a new chassis.
Which makes Sean Seigneur's victory, frankly, absurd.
Oh, totally.
I mean, we need to talk about the mental fortitude it takes to pull off what he just did. The guy makes his season debut, stepping entirely cold into a grid that has been at each other's throats for 8 brutal weeks prior.
Right, the tension was already at a boiling point.
Exactly. And he breaks the so-called curse. He actually takes the win.
What's fascinating here is the distinct advantage of arriving without the emotional baggage the rest of the field is carrying.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, Sean didn't have any lingering vendettas from Kentucky. He didn't have the stress of a championship points battle weighing on his shoulders. He drove with absolute mental clarity.
He's just entirely objective out there.
Precisely. He was able to evaluate the evolving chaos around him purely objectively. When you are watching other drivers throw away their races because they're trying to settle a score from, like, 3 weeks ago, being the one driver who is just running his own race is an immense strategic advantage.
He basically outweighed the panic.
He did. He just let everyone else implode.
But he didn't just wait in the back. He was at the absolute bleeding edge of it for the last 20 laps. I mean, that battle between Sean and Ryan and Barber was something out of a gladiator arena.
It really was.
They were throwing absolute haymakers at each other, passing and repassing at Darlington in the closing stages.
Yeah, that's almost unheard of.
It requires a level of spatial awareness that borders on the supernatural, honestly, because you are practically painting the walls with your side mirrors just to find a way around.
And that level of sustained, high-wire pressure eventually forces a fracture. I mean, Ryan Barber showed phenomenal raw pace and immense courage.
He really did.
But when you are locked in that kind of duel, your mental bandwidth is entirely consumed by the car directly beside you. You start losing the broader picture of the race.
Right, tunnel vision sets in.
Exactly. The margin for error evaporates, not just because the track is tight, but because your cognitive load is maxed out. And that is exactly what set the stage for Ryan's eventual downfall in those final moments.
The ultimate messy ending. I mean, Ryan ends up finishing P4 after an incredibly brutal tangle with Maddie Ray.
Yeah, that was rough to watch.
Mr. Sheen's around, as the paddock says. Ryan was practically tasting the champagne on the top step, but Maddie Ray plays the thief in the night, brings the heat, and it all ends in tears.
It always does at Darlington.
And who benefits? Andy J. Barber sneaks through the absolute carnage to secure a massive P2 finish, and Craig Raffey quietly rounds out the podium in P3.
Which perfectly illustrates the core law of Darlington racecraft. The drivers who survive the chaos of the leaders battling often inherit the spoils.
Yeah, just by surviving.
Right. Annie J. Barber and Craig Roffey didn't necessarily have the raw pace to straight up pass Ryan and Sean under green flag conditions, but they had the situational awareness to recognize that the leaders were driving angry.
They could see the explosion coming.
Exactly. They hung back just enough to ensure that when the inevitable explosion happened, they weren't caught in the shrapnel.
Now, contrast that strategic patience with the absolute horror story that was Gary Wellman's race.
Oh, wow.
The defending champion gets completely demolished in a wreck. I saw the replay. His Ford Mustang looked like a crushed soda can.
It was barely recognizable as a car.
Right. And yet, through sheer, stubborn willpower, he limps that destroyed bucket of bolts home to a P9 finish.
That is the anatomy of a champion. When most drivers take a hit like that, their spirit breaks before their car does.
Yeah, they just give up.
They look at the damage, they feel the steering pulling hard to the left, and they mentally retire. They just park it.
But not Wellman.
No, Wellman fundamentally understands that a championship isn't won by your best races. It's won by how many points you can scavenge from your worst ones.
Scavenge is the perfect word.
Surviving a catastrophic hit and still dragging the car into the top 10 sends a terrifying psychological message to the rest of the grid.
Speaking of psychological messages, Darlington sent a very clear one to Colin Bennett, which was basically, I don't care about your feelings.
Oh, poor Colin.
It was the guy's birthday race. You gear up, you're excited, you want to put on a show and celebrate, and he gets tangled up in an incident with Nicholas Walsh. His car ends up on the hook, towed away.
The track is a completely objective, entirely ruthless judge. It doesn't care about your milestones or your birthday.
Not at all.
But while Colin suffered the emotional worst of it, we have to look at the other extreme of the spectrum. Perry Anastakis drove what might be the most disciplined race of the entire season.
Absolute masterclass from Perry.
Yeah.
Let's give massive props where they are due here.
Truly.
While the rest of the grid was out there actively trying to put each other into the grandstands, Perry brought his Chevy Camaro home in P7 with a completely flawless 0x incident record.
0x at Darlington is basically a miracle.
No contact, no wall scrapes, no off tracks. Zero. Over 130 laps.
By refusing to overdrive, by actively lifting and letting the aggressive drivers wreck themselves out of his way, Anastakis secured a premium finish.
He just stayed out of the mess.
He treated the race like a marathon of avoidance. He recognized that the biggest hazard wasn't the track itself, but the collapsing egos of his competitors.
I am going to push back on this entire narrative, though, especially regarding our race winner.
Oh.
Okay.
Let's hear it.
I am looking at Sean Signor's win, and I have to ask, was this actually a stroke of strategic genius? Or was it just the equivalent of walking through a smoky bar brawl, keeping your head down, and accidentally picking up the winner's purse while everyone else was busy punching each other in the face?
That's a colorful way to put it.
Well, think about it. Because Ryan Barber and Matty Ray tangle, Wellman gets destroyed. Did Sean win, or did the paddock just collectively hand him the trophy by losing their minds?
I challenge the premise that walking through a bar brawl untouched is an accident.
You think he planned it?
In a field of 30 highly competitive drivers, positioning yourself to capitalize on the mistakes of hyper-aggressive rivals is a highly intentional skill.
Fair point.
Sean had the raw pace to run at the front, yes, but he also had the emotional control to survive the haymakers. Avoiding the brawl requires you to anticipate the brawl.
Right. You have to see the punches coming.
Exactly. You have to read the body language of the cars ahead of you. You don't accidentally survive 130 laps at the front of a Darlington pack. He forced them into a mistake by applying pressure without crossing the line himself.
Fine, I will concede he knew exactly when to step back from the ledge.
He definitely did.
Which is the perfect bridge into our next topic. Because while Sean survived the physical concrete walls of Darlington, a massive chunk of this grid completely failed the bureaucratic survival test.
Oh, the bureaucracy was out in full force.
It's time to step into Section 2, the steward's office. The dirty laundry from round 9 is stacked to the ceiling right now.
The penalty reports from this round are some of the most extensive we have seen all season. There is a complete breakdown in paddock discipline.
Let's start with Zach Hilder, jumping the green flag. He gets slapped with a black flag before the race even really begins.
It's just a rookie mistake, honestly.
And then, as if to aggressively prove to the universe that he has completely lost his composure, he subsequently wipes out the turn 2 wall so incredibly hard that his front bumper was entirely missing for the remainder of the race.
Yeah, jumping a green flag is a classic manifestation of mismanaged adrenaline. You're sitting in the pack, the tension is unbearable, and you're so desperate to gain track position before turn one that you try to anticipate the starter rather than reacting to them.
You just jump the gun.
Exactly. The moment the stewards issue that black flag, the driver undergoes a total psychological collapse. The red mist descends.
Oh, the redness is real.
Zach wasn't driving the track anymore. He was driving his own anger. And when you drive angry at Darlington, well, you end up driving a naked chassis.
The red mist didn't just descend on Zach, though. It completely swallowed Barry Donnelly whole. We need a paddock intervention right now.
Yeah, Barry's race was a disaster.
Barry racked up a staggering 24 incident points in a single race. 24x. He finished 29 laps down.
That's practically a destruction derby score.
And let's not pretend this is an isolated bad day at the office. Barry was disqualified from the Auto Club round just weeks prior for the exact same kind of behavior.
What's fascinating here is, if we connect this to the bigger picture, a 24x incident count is not a string of bad luck. It is a fundamental refusal to adapt to the reality of the race.
You wouldn't back down.
When a driver is accumulating that level of damage and continuing to push, they transition from being a competitor to being an active hazard. Shannon Wright was right there with him, by the way, racking up 22 incident points.
Oh, so terrible.
This is the danger of the sunk cost fallacy in racecraft. They get involved in one incident, their race is compromised, and instead of resetting and salvaging what they can, they try to win the race back in a single corner.
And they just end up causing 3 more wrecks in the process.
Exactly.
And it isn't just the on-track terrorism either. The steward's office is completely bogged down policing pit lane entries. This is an epidemic right now.
It really is.
Jake Atkinson hitting the cones at Indy. Reuben Phelps and Kay Donnelly getting black flagged at Kentucky. Everyone is getting penalized for completely blowing their pit entry.
Because the psychological pressure of a green flag pit stop is immense, and drivers are failing to manage their own sensory perception.
Wait, sensory perception? How so?
Well, when you spend 40 laps running at 180 miles per hour on a high-banked oval, your brain's perception of speed becomes completely warped.
But I don't get it. You have a braking marker, you see the cones. Just hit the brakes and cross the line at the speed limit. Why is half the grid suddenly forgetting how to slow down?
It is the fear of the undercut. Under a green flag, every fraction of a second you spend decelerating feels like an eternity.
Because everyone else is still at full throttle.
Right. You are watching your rival stay out on track at full speed, and your brain is screaming at you that you're losing time. So drivers are pushing their braking zones deeper and deeper into the pit entry lane.
Just overriding their own discipline to save a tenth of a second.
Entirely ignoring that their visual processing of speed is distorted, they hit the brakes, realize too late that 90 miles per hour still carries massive momentum, and they slide right through the cones.
I am going to throw a flag on the stewards here, though.
All right, let's hear the defense.
Are these pit lane entry rules just too draconian? Are the stewards acting like power-tripping bouncers at an exclusive nightclub, throwing you out onto the street just because you scuffed your shoe on the doormat?
That's quite the analogy.
I mean, getting a drive-through penalty that ruins your entire race because you clipped a cone while dealing with the stress of a green flag cycle feels incredibly harsh.
It feels harsh until you consider the alternative. The boundary is absolute because pit lane safety is absolute.
I guess that's true. Mechanics are standing right there.
The drivers know exactly where the line is. The stewards aren't being draconian. The drivers are making a conscious risk-to-reward calculation and failing. They are trying to cheat the braking zone to make up for a lack of pace on the track.
Oh, that's a brutal assessment.
If you cannot rein in your own desperation enough to hit a static speed target, you deserve the penalty. It is a test of emotional control, and right now, the grid is failing it.
And that failure is completely detonating the official championship standings, which brings us to Section 3.
The points are a mess right now.
The points battle has become incredibly volatile because drivers at the top are suddenly hemorrhaging points to these completely unforced errors. Let's look at the king of the hill, Reuben Phelps.
Maintaining the championship lead is proving to be a heavy burden for him.
He's sitting on top with 307 points, but man, he has been through absolute hell the last few weeks. He had to battle through an insane amount of mid-pack chaos just to recover to a P11 finish at Darlington.
Yeah, P11 is not what he wanted.
The buffer he built with those early wins at Daytona and Charlotte is dissolving right in front of his eyes.
Because wearing the championship leader's target changes how the rest of the grid races you. No one gives Reuben an inch anymore.
They all want a piece of him.
Every driver knows that passing the championship leader is a statement. Ruben has driven brilliantly to avoid the major wrecks, but the psychological weight of defending a lead is entirely different from the hunger of chasing one.
He's on the defensive.
He is driving not to lose, while the guys behind him are driving to win.
And the guy chasing him the hardest is the absolute last person you want in your rearview mirror.
Yeah.
Gary Wellman is in second with 286 points.
Oh, Wellman is terrifying right now.
This goes back to what we just talked about. Wellman is the horror movie villain of this league. No matter how many times you demolish his car, no matter how far back in the pack you send him, he just keeps walking forward.
Like a Terminator.
Exactly. You look in the mirror, and he is right there holding a wrench, smiling, completely unbothered by the chaos.
Resilience is a quantifiable weapon in a championship fight. Wellman's ability to survive Darlington with a destroyed car means Phelps cannot breathe for a single second.
And what about Troy Davidson?
Sitting menacingly in third place with 274 points. Davidson is the quiet beneficiary of this entire Phelps-Wellman dynamic. He is staying out of the spotlight, banking top 5 finishes, and letting the leaders exhaust each other.
He is a silent assassin. But if we look just below that, the middle of the top 10 is an absolute pressure cooker.
It really is tightening up.
Matthew Raymond in P5 with 264 points and Perry Anastakis in P6 with 252 points are locked in a dead heat. And their rivalry is fascinating because it's so incredibly calculating.
It's very strategic between those two.
They are practically playing a gentleman's game of chess at 180 miles an hour.
It is a rivalry built on mutual respect. They will race each other hard, but they leave exactly one car width of space. They trust each other's spatial awareness.
Contrast that with what is happening immediately behind them in the standings.
Oh boy, the exact opposite.
Oh, the fireworks. Craig Roffey is sitting in P7 with 250 points, and he's currently engaged in what can only be described as a blood feud with the entire Simbois team, specifically Cade Donnelly, who is in P9 with 231 points.
It's getting out of hand.
Guys, it doesn't matter what track we are at. It doesn't matter if it's lap 2 or lap 120. Every single time, Craig Roffey and Cade Donnelly are within a half mile of each other, all strategy goes out the window.
It's pure spite racing.
Paint is traded, doors are slammed, and lap times completely plummet.
This raises an important question about the limits of racecraft. When a rivalry becomes a personal vendetta, it completely corrupts your strategic decision-making.
Because you stop caring about your own race.
You stop racing the track and you start racing the driver. If Craig Roffey intentionally compromises his own exit speed out of turn 4 just to ensure he blocks Cade Donnelly, he is hurting his own overall race time.
Just a proved point.
Spite racing is an emotional luxury that costs championship points.
I love the drama of it, but you are right, it is entirely self-destructive. Which brings us perfectly into Section 4, the unofficial leaderboards.
This is where the real story is.
Because while the official points tell us who is collecting the plastic trophies, the unofficial metrics tell us who is actually running the paddock politics. Let's talk about the team's championship.
The team dynamics are currently dictating the flow of every single race.
How so?
Well, the drafting alliances between Fox 1, Fox 9, Rogue, and the Southern Stars are defining who has the pace to break away and who gets swallowed by the pack.
But we have to shine a massive spotlight on the absolute dysfunction of the Simbois. Guys, look in the mirror. You have incredible raw talent on your roster, but you spend half the race actively taking each other out instead of working together.
The friendly fire is completely off the charts.
You are supposed to be an aerodynamic drafting train, not a demolition derby.
The failure of the Simbois to execute a cohesive drafting strategy is fatal. In these V8 supercars on an oval, pushing a teammate creates an aerodynamic vacuum that allows both cars to increase their top speed.
It's basic drafting physics.
But the Simbois are so entirely consumed by internal ego battles, fighting for dominance within their own team, that they fracture their own draft. The moment one teammate pulls out to pass another, they punch a hole in the air that slows them both down.
Allowing the unified teams, like Rogue, to just blow right past them.
Exactly.
It is exactly like watching the Southern Stars out there. Sometimes the Southern Stars look like a multi-headed hydra that just keeps turning around and biting its own necks instead of attacking the other teams.
That's a great way to describe it.
You cannot graft if you are terrified that the guy pushing you wants to pick your spot.
Yeah.
Which leads me to my absolute favorite new metric we are tracking, the chaos scores.
It is a deeply revealing statistic about the psychological state of the grid.
We have tallied the total incident points for every driver across the season. Who is the biggest on-track terrorist? To Tony Raffi leads the entire league with 79 incident points in just 9 starts.
79 in 9 starts.
Let that sink in. Adam Malone is sitting at 67, and Todd Maxfield is at 60.
We have to analyze what a high chaos score actually means for the racing product. It goes far beyond the individual drive-through penalties these drivers receive. Let's examine the specific driving styles of the paddock's most notorious drivers.
The sledgehammers.
Right. Giuseppe Maiolo, they literally call him Sledgehammer in the paddock, and Tyson Carey. Both of these drivers employ a hyper-aggressive, almost bullying racecraft.
Bully racing is the perfect term for it. They throw their car into a gap that doesn't exist and essentially tell the driver next to them, you can either back out or we can both go into the concrete fence.
Yes, they use their own willingness to crash as a weapon.
They weaponize their lack of risk aversion.
Precisely. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, having a high chaos score completely dismantles their ability to utilize the draft. Drafting requires ultimate, implicit trust. You are tucking your front bumper mere inches from the rear bumper of the car ahead.
Right.
If you are a teammate of Tony Raffi and you know he carries 79 incident points, are you going to trust him not to suddenly lift off the throttle unpredictably?
Not a chance. If I see Tony Raffi in front of me, I am hitting the brakes. I am bailing out of that draft immediately because I know the explosion is coming and I refuse to be the collateral damage.
And that is the true penalty of the chaos score. Drivers with high incident rates isolate themselves. Their own teammates abandon them.
The paddock essentially quarantines them on the track.
It is a self-defeating cycle of aggression. They bully their way forward, but without drafting partners, they can never sustain the speed needed to actually win.
So how does all of this paddock drama, the broken alliances, the spite racing, and the soaring chaos scores hold up when we completely change the environment?
It's going to be tested, that's for sure.
Because we are leaving the claustrophobia of Darlington and heading into an entirely different beast. Let's move to Section 5, the Texas Motor Speedway preview.
Round 10, the Anzac round. 125 laps of high-speed strategic execution.
Everyone on the grid, listen to me right now. You absolutely cannot drive Texas the way you just drove Darlington. The mental shift required is monumental.
It's night and day.
Darlington was a knife fight in an elevator. Texas is wide open. It is a massive 1.5-mile track. It is entirely dependent on the draft, but more importantly, it demands extreme fuel-saving measures if you want to execute a flawless two-stop strategy.
The fuel-save meta is going to define this entire round. At Texas, you cannot simply put the hammer down, burn your tires, and gap the field.
You'll just run out of gas.
The aerodynamics of the track dictate that a solitary car trying to break away will always inevitably be run down by an organized drafting pack. To survive Texas, you have to suppress your ego, tuck into the slipstream of the car ahead of you, and actively lift and coast into the corners to save fuel.
But this is the paradox. Lifting and coasting requires immense trust in the driver you are following. And we just spent 10 minutes talking about the chaos scores.
That is the ultimate tension of Texas.
How on earth do you execute a delicate lift and coast fuel strategy while tucked up behind a driver who has 70 incident points and drives like a sledgehammer?
You have to trust the pack, even when the pack is inherently untrustworthy. The drivers who possess natural patience will thrive in this environment.
Like who?
Take Todd Maxfield, for example. Despite his high incident points, his underlying driving style is actually very patient when he isn't trapped in dirty air. If he can find the right drafting partner, he can execute the fuel save. And Kim Raffi is another prime example of the discipline required.
Meanwhile, the tire burners, the guys who treat the throttle pedal like an on-off switch, I'm looking directly at Peter Madsen here, are going to completely self-destruct in the final stint.
Oh, without a doubt.
They will burn their rubber,
Yeah.
trying to lead every lap. They will obliterate their fuel window, and they will be absolute sitting ducks with 20 laps to go when the fuel savers finally decide to make their move.
It requires extreme psychological discipline. You have to actively ignore the instinct to pass early in the race. You have to be completely content to sit in 4th or 5th place in a pace line, letting the leader punch the hole in the air while you quietly save fuel, protect your tires, and wait for the final pit cycle.
Okay, so let's put our reputations on the line. It is time for our bold predictions for the Texas podium. I am going completely off the board here. I am picking Adam Malone as my wildcard winner.
That is a highly controversial choice, given his chaos score of 67.
I know the stats, but hear my logic out. Yes, he has 67 incident points. But a massive chunk of those points came from being collateral damage in other people's messes.
He has had some bad luck.
The guy has undeniable raw pace. He suffered heavily in the claustrophobic tangles of Kentucky and Darlington because he gets impatient in traffic. But Texas is wide. It is incredibly spacious.
So you think the space will save him?
That wide track will allow him to stay clean, avoid the bottlenecks that trigger his frustration, and finally utilize his raw drafting prowess. When the track opens up and the bottleneck is removed, Malone is going to absolutely fly past the guys who are too busy fighting each other. Who are you taking?
I am evaluating this purely based on who understands the specific, unforgiving demands of the Texas fuel-save meta. I am picking Kim Rafi too.
Kim Rafi, too. Are you serious? The guy is practically cursed with terrible luck this season.
He has been plagued by circumstances outside his control, yes. But his reputation in the paddock is built on elite, completely clean strategy. He is one of the few drivers who rarely beats himself.
That's true. He doesn't make unforced errors.
The two-stop extreme fuel-save strategy is Kim's exact bread and butter. While the Simbois are fighting each other and the sledgehammers are burning their tires to lead lap 40, Kim will be quietly hitting his exact fuel numbers.
Executing flawless pit entries without locking his brakes.
Exactly, and leapfrogging the entire aggressive pack in the final 20 laps.
So what does this all mean? I have to aggressively push back on this entire pristine fuel-save premise. We are talking about lifting and coasting like we're all going on a Sunday scenic drive.
It's the only way to make the numbers work.
But aren't we just blindly assuming a green flag run? With absolute terrorists like Barry Donnelly and Tony Raffi on the grid, betting your entire race on a delicate two-stop fuel save is like playing Russian roulette with a fully loaded chamber.
That's the risk you take.
A late caution will absolutely burn the strategy guys to the ground. If one of the sledgehammers puts it in the wall with 15 laps to go, the yellow flag comes out, your fuel saving means absolutely nothing, and the aggressive drivers take over on the restart sprint.
This raises an important question, and it highlights the exact gamble every single driver and crew chief will be agonizing over on the pit box.
Run long or sprint?
Do you run long, stick to the fuel save, and risk a late yellow wiping out your advantage? Or do you sprint, burn your fuel, and risk running dry if the race stays green?
It's a terrifying choice to make.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the outcome of Texas won't just be decided by who has the most raw pace. It will be decided by who correctly predicts the behavior of the most chaotic drivers on the grid.
That's terrifying.
Will the aggressive sledgehammers of the league, the Maiolos, the Carries, finally adapt to the patience required to draft at Texas? Or will the Chaos Score leaders actively weaponize themselves to cause late yellows just to completely destroy the fuel saver strategies?
And that is exactly what I want every single driver on the grid to mull over as they strap into their rigs for round 10. Are you going to be the master of the high-speed draft? Or are you going to be the reason the yellow flags fly and ruin the race for everyone else?
The paddock will be watching.
Check your mirrors, respect the draft, and remember, if you let your ego write checks your racecraft can't cash, we are going to be talking about you right here next week. Leave the shattered fiberglass masterpieces back at Darlington. Texas demands absolute precision. We'll see you on the grid.